I'm LRJHS and welcome back to another video. So today, what we're going to do is a little bit different. I actually have a surprise for you. It may not be a surprise you like, because it's a pop quiz. So in the last 3 videos, you've been learning a lot about opening strategies. Beginning ones, advanced ones, and even looking at an example game. So with that, I want to test your knowledge. I've thrown a lot of stuff at you, and you've been able to absorb all of that information like a sponge. But can you actually apply that to your own games? Maybe you already have, and that would be great. But I think practice and puzzles is the best way to do that. So that's where this pop quiz comes in. I'm going to give you 11 puzzles, and I want you to try and solve them. If you can get them all right, well, you definitely know your opening strategies. If you can get most of them right, you still know a lot of your opening strategies. But either way, this pop quiz will be a test to see how well you know your opening strategies. As we go through the questions, my recommendation to you is to pause the video at each one and write down your answers. I want you to think about the question, try and calculate variations or think back to your answers from previous videos, and write down your answers so you can keep them on a piece of paper. This will allow you to check yourself and see how many you got right and how many you got wrong. If you do get something wrong, feel free to ask questions in the comments. Remember, that's one of the best ways to learn. And I hope you won't be afraid to ask questions if you're wrong and feel silly or anything like that, because I hope to build a community where people won't make fun of others for getting something wrong. Chess is a really difficult game, and some parts may seem very easy to some and hard to others, and vice versa to every other player. I know there are things I'm very good at and things that I'm not as good at. Well, there are other players that are really good at the things I'm not as good at. Does that make me a worse player? No, we're just better at different things. So if there's some opening strategy that just doesn't comprehend to you, there might be someone else that has the same problem. There might be someone else who knows that strategy perfectly, but can't figure out something else. So please don't be afraid to ask questions in the comments. I'm here to help you, and it's much easier for me to do that when I know exactly where your mistakes and struggles are, because that will show me what I can focus on and do better. Okay, without further ado, let's jump on into the quiz. We will first start with some review questions, so no puzzles yet. Here's your first question. Which statement is true? Develop knights before bishops, develop bishops before knights, or develop either one first? Question number 2. Choose all of the correct statements. Open with a center pawn, always play to gain control of the center, use as few pieces as you can and make lots of threats, castle as soon as possible, bring your queen out early and attack. Question number 3. This one is going to be an extension of question number 2. For the choices you did not pick on question number 2, try to figure out why they are wrong. Then, state the correct answer. This one will require you to do this on your own. So make sure you trust your answers. All right, question number 4. I want you to finish the sentence. You should develop with blank against the opponent. What word goes in the blank? And question number 5. Approximately how many times should you move the same piece in the opening? And lastly, question number 6. What are the 4 rules of castling? All right, and with that, you've finished the written quiz part of this pop quiz. Let's do a review of these 6 questions. So to start on question number 1, the statement, develop knights before bishops, is correct. Now, of course, this won't always be true in every single opening, but generally, that's the strategy you'll want to follow in the opening. Most likely, you're going to be developing your knights before your bishops. For question number 2, there were 3 correct statements. The first was that you should open with a center pawn. The second was that you should always play to gain control of the center. And the third was that you should castle as soon as possible. The reason why these 3 are correct is because they try to get control of the center, help activate your pieces, and also get your king to safety, which are some of the most important strategies to playing a good opening. What that means is that for question number 3, the other 2 statements are incorrect. That would be use as few pieces as possible and make lots of threats, and bring your queen out early and attack. It may be tricky because part of those sound correct. You do want to make a lot of threats in the opening, but you want to try and use as many pieces as you can and develop them with threats. That's the small distinction, but it's very important. And the reason why the final statement is incorrect is that you should not bring your queen out early and try and attack. You should prioritize developing your minor pieces, controlling the center, and getting your king to safety, and only then developing your queen when everything else is already moved out. For question number 4, you should develop with threats against your opponent. For question number 5, the answer here is 1, or once. The idea is that you want to move out a piece once, and then try and move a different piece out into the game. This won't always be possible, but the idea of this question is just to remind you that you should try and give all of your pieces equal time and love in the game, and you shouldn't prioritize one piece over the other. And finally, for question 6, the 4 rules of castling are as follows. First, there can't be any piece between your king and your rook. Second, your king and your rook have to be on their starting squares, and neither can have previously moved. Third, you can't castle in check, and fourth, you can't castle through check. So that concludes the questions and the answers of the written section. Now let's move on to the actual puzzles. We're going to move to chess base and to the board, and we're going to look at 5 positions. Let's take a look. So here is question number 1. In this position, it's white's turn to move. I want you to try and find some good moves for white. Try to list at least 3 good opening moves and explain why you think they're good. These explanations will be different for everyone, but when I give the answer, I'll also give a general explanation as well. Question number 2. This position is also white's turn to move. Black has played this opening very poorly. He's made pawn moves and allowed white to control the center for free. After his last move, the blunder knight to d7, white can actually checkmate black in 3 moves. Can you find it? Question number 3. Early on in this game, black has made a questionable move. How can white take full control of the center in this position?
Question number 4. This position is a continuation of the previous one. On white's turn to move, I want you to try and list as many developing moves as you can. Be sure to ask yourself if your move makes a threat or attacks the center. If it does, it will probably be a good move. And finally, question number 5. This position is black's turn to move. But here, white has forgotten about 2 main opening strategies, and in the first 8 moves of the game is already lost. So my first question for you is, what strategies did white break or did not follow in this game? And second, how can black punish white's bad opening play? Black has a very strong move in this position. Okay, and that finishes the puzzles section of your pop quiz. Let's do a quick review. We'll start with this first position, where the thing I wanted you to do was find good opening moves that developed your pieces. Some examples of good developing moves are knight f3 and knight e2, because they both develop the knight and control the center. Bishop e3 and bishop f4 do the same exact thing. They develop a piece and control the center. We can add bishop g5 as well, because it develops a piece and potentially makes a threat. We can also say queen e2. The reason why I'm putting this one last is because it does move out the queen before the other 2 minor pieces, but it actually guards the center and potentially makes a threat of pushing the e4 pawn up 1. But most importantly, the 2 knight moves and the 3 bishop moves would be the most correct answers. On to the second position. Over here, we said that black had made a blunder with knight to d7, and white can checkmate in 3 moves. The answer is as follows. Notice how black has weakened this diagonal toward his king. And it just so happens that there are 2 white pieces that point to that diagonal. So first, we'll bring our queen into the game. Once again, it does look like we may be breaking an opening principle by moving the queen out very early. But look at how white has a clear reason for doing that. He's calculated that there's checkmate in 3 moves. White's going to win the game in 3 moves, so it's okay to break an opening principle over here. The only way black can get out of check is by blocking with his pawn. But then white can capture the pawn with his bishop. He will lose his bishop, but then by recapturing with his queen, this is checkmate, because the black king can't move anywhere. And because he's moved his f7 pawn up 1, there's nothing to block the check, and there's nothing to take the queen. So this is game over, and white's already won. This is how dangerous it is to play bad opening moves. If we go back, some of you might have also seen you can take this with the queen. You can sacrifice your queen and still win the game, because the king is so weak that even white's bishop alone can give checkmate. Let's move on to the next position. Over here, I asked you what white can do to take full control over the center. And your goal should be to get a 2-pawn center. If you're able to do that, you want to do that. In this case, white can play the move e4 freely, attack the knight on d5 and force it to move back, and gain his 2-pawn center, the pawns on e4 and d4. Because this is a safe move, it's also a correct move. So the best move is pawn to e4. On to the next position, where this was the extension of the previous one, here I just wanted you to find some good opening moves. So if you can develop a piece and control the center, that would be a good move. Some examples would be knight c3, knight f3, bishop e3, and bishop to f4. All moves that develop a new piece and control the center. And for the final position, this one with black's turn to move, the two strategies that white did not follow in this position were that he moved too many pawns and he moved his queen out early. Those are two things that you don't want to do. Notice how white's minor pieces are all on their starting squares, and the only pieces that white has moved are his pawns and his queen. That's a recipe for disaster. And over here, black can play the move bishop to h4. This is a tactic called a pin, which we'll look at in more depth later. But the idea is that this bishop attacks the queen, but also looks at the king on the same diagonal. So the queen can't actually move, because if it does, the king would be in check, and that would be illegal. So what that means is that on the next move, the bishop will capture the queen, and there's really nothing that white can do about it, because if he takes the bishop, well then our queen or our knight will recapture the enemy queen. So because white has played only pawn moves and queen moves and did not follow basic opening strategies that you learned, he's lost after 10 moves. That's why you should always follow your opening strategies to play good chess. But that's the final position in your pop quiz, and we've now concluded with all of the questions.
All right, and that final review ends your pop quiz. Congratulations! You got through these 11 questions. Hopefully you got them all right, and that'll give you a good sense of your opening strengths and knowledge. If anything felt confusing, please remember to watch my previous videos or just ask questions if you need. Review or asking questions is the best way to learn something that you don't fully understand. I think the most important thing from this video, besides the review and the practice quiz that you've done, is that improvement takes time and effort. It doesn't come immediately, not to everyone. Well, that's it for this short video. Thanks for joining me on this pop quiz, and come join me on the next video, where we'll combine all of the things you've already learned and practiced. We'll also learn one new advanced strategy, and then we'll apply everything that you've learned with 2 example games. Until then, this is LRJ Chess, signing off with a checkmate.